Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Alright, and welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And as always, I am your host, Jesse Tapia. Alright, talked to you guys last Wednesday. Here we are again for this Wednesday. Not too much big news going on in the NBA, some big news going on in the NCAA. And since we are a basketball podcast and not just an NBA podcast, I will be talking about the big news going on for this first segment. NCAA came up with a couple of rule changes, so we'll be talking about that. Second segment, I'll be talking about the Christmas Day games and the week games of opening week that the NBA has put out for us to see. And then for the last two segments, we will be talking about any other news going on in the NBA or basketball for that matter. So that's what's going on for today. Like I said, not too much news going on right now. We do got the Rockets, Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony has verbalized that he will be signing with the Rockets, so I think we could all stop sweating over that. I don't think anyone was, that for any matter. I figured we all thought that Melo was going to the Rockets. And that move is one where it's one where they need each other. The Rockets needed to fill that Trevor Ariza void in the starting five since he headed over to Phoenix. And Melo wanted to start and play for a decent team. He gets to play for a great team in Houston, start for them, and the Houston gets to fill that spot that Trevor Ariza left. Will it make him better? That remains to be seen. But I do think that this was probably the best spot for Carmelo Anthony to get it going again this season. I don't expect him to be 25 points per game or anything like that. But, you can't really be any worse than you were last season, can you? It's a possibility, so we'll see about it. But either way, like I said, NCAA passing some new rules. And there's always been a lot of talk about the NCAA, how they don't let players get paid, how they basically scam the players, basically these players work for free in order to make the NCAA millions on top of millions on top of millions of dollars. It's a bit ridiculous. These student athletes are basically just unpaid workers. In reality, remember that Cardale Jones tweet that one time, if you follow the NFL or college football for that matter, he tweeted out, "I don't get why we got to go to class. We come here to play football. They don't bring us here to play school." That's true. These athletes aren't brought here to better their education. That's the biggest lie that's ever been told, too. Everyone will bring up, they get free education and all that. Yeah, that's not why they're there. They're there to sell tickets, they're there to generate revenue, and they're there to win ball games for their college. The coaches, athletic directors, and all that could care less about whether or not they're showing up to class, just as long as that GPA is good enough for them to play in the next game. That's what it's all about. But those fans out there think, they get education with it. Not as important as you think. Maybe for you, but for these guys, they're only there to do one thing. So there's always been a struggle between the student athletes and the NCAA. One where the NCAA seems like the bully, which they are. But it seems like maybe they're finally coming to their senses if you look on the surface. So looking at the rule changes that the NCAA has adopted, players can hire agents now. And you might think, oh, that's great for every player, but there's a catch. Not every player can hire an agent. You can only hire an agent if you are labeled as an elite level prospect, either as a high school recruit or as a college player. And who gets to determine whether or not you are an elite level prospect is USA Basketball and not the NBA. I don't really understand that. The NBA are the ones who normally deal with the draft. Scouts deal with, I don't get making USA Basketball, making them the decider on whether and who's an elite prospect and who isn't. And Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted out today about how the USA Basketball felt about it. His tweet was about 3 hours ago from where I'm recording this. He said, "Few are pleased with NCAA's handling of release. USA Basketball and the NBA were blindsided with NCAA dictating USA Basketball would decide which high school players could eventually hire agents or college players for that matter. USA Basketball doesn't have any desire or infrastructure for those evaluations. If anyone has that expertise, it's the NBA." And like I said, on the surface, these rule changes look good, but when you look more into it, some of it doesn't make sense, one of them being this rule. Not the rule of players being able to hire agents, but USA Basketball deciding who is an elite level prospect and who isn't. I do feel like this is a job for the NBA to do and not USA Basketball. And you could tell they weren't too happy about it, according to Adrian Wojnarowski's tweet. And people could think, oh, well, what does Woj know? Woj knows a lot. So let's not doubt him. And these agents also got to be certified by the NCAA. And as far as what the agents can do for these players, obviously their jobs, but also pay for meals and transportation for the players and families. So at least now, John Doe, playing for North Carolina or whoever, can have his Subway sandwich or wherever he's going to eat paid for by his agent, rather than him having to scrounge up some change for it. And I'm curious too, in the NCAA, are you just not allowed to make money if you're a student athlete? Honest question. North Carolina, the football team, were given sneakers, some Jordans. These are team edition sneakers right here, North Carolina, colorway and everything. Only about 150 or so, or however many players they got on the team. That's how many were made for. 13 players from that college team sold their sneakers. And you might ask, why is this relevant to basketball? It's relevant because I think PJ Tucker bought a pair of those sneakers. So there's irrelevancy. They sold the sneakers, and those sneakers probably going for a couple grand, considering that, there's a limited amount of them made, and these retro Jordans tend to go for a high price, given that you also got a much different colorway compared to everything else. So they're probably going for a couple grand. I don't understand why these players can't make money off of that. If the sneakers were gifted to them and they're theirs to keep, why can't you sell what's yours? What's the difference between a player buying his own TV and selling it to this? People say, oh, they were gifted. So what you're telling me is the player was gifted the sneakers, so I'm assuming he now owns that pair of sneakers, just like he owned the TV in my comparison. If he owned them both, why can't he sell both and make money? I don't understand it. But like I said, that's just some of the confusion still I have to deal with the NCAA. I don't understand why you can't sell your own things for money. Is the only way for them to make money is to get a job, I'm assuming. But how easy is that, considering that you not only have class, you're also on the field for hours on top of hours each day? Riddle me that one. I don't know. But either way, if you're labeled an elite level prospect, you can hire an agent. And I'm curious how that works. Let's say that you're like a Michael Porter type. You're able to hire an agent. You hurt your back. Your draft stock goes down. and you figure, you know what, maybe I should just stay another year? Are you able to enter your second year with an agent, or is it one where if you hire an agent during the season, then you can't come back? That's something I'd like to see. Also, for underclassmen, if you enter the draft and you go undrafted, you're able to come back to school. That does not pertain to everyone. You cannot enter the NBA draft as a junior, I'm assuming, go undrafted and come back. It's only for underclassmen, and I'm assuming if underclassmen meant what it meant when I was in high school and when I'm in college, it means freshmen and sophomores. So that rule only pertains to them. Then there's longer postseason bans, suspensions, and all that handed out to programs who break the rules as far as their coach with their coaches and all that. So, I mean, that's another rule to think about. But like I said, the biggest rules here is that if you're an underclassman and you go undrafted, you can come back to school. Everything paid for still. And if you're labeled an elite level prospect, you can't hire an agent. So not everyone's going to get to reap the benefits of these new rules. They only pertain to some groups of people. So we'll see how it ends up working out. It seems like one where the NCAA passes and on the surface it looks great, but there are some loopholes to them, and you got to read into it more. So we'll see how it ends up working out, but we're going to wrap it up here. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Christmas Day games and the opening week schedule of the NBA, so stay tuned, and I'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Spent that first segment talking about the new NCAA rules pertaining to college basketball athletes. If you are labeled an elite level prospect as a high school recruit or as a college player, you can hire an agent mid-season. If you are not labeled an elite level prospect, then you cannot hire an agent. Basically, the NBA is saying if you're not a lottery prospect, then what do you even need an agent for, huh? And also, if you are an underclassman who declares for the draft and goes undrafted, you are able to return back to school. That does not go for the juniors. And I'm assuming it does not go for the fifth-year seniors, considering they are not underclassmen. So, these rules seem nice, but they aren't necessarily for everyone. So now we move on and we talk about one of the more exciting parts of the offseason, and that is the release of the Christmas Day games and the opening week schedule for the NBA, along with the games on MLK Day. So let's look into these games and I'll give my thoughts on what the NBA has given us. So opening night, October 16th, Tuesday. The NBA has decided to put out Philly versus Boston and Oklahoma City versus Golden State. I like it. I like the Philly versus Boston matchup, and I like the fact that both of these matchups are East and West. Obviously, they've been doing that, but I wanted to point it out. Shout out to the NBA. They've done a good job so far as Adam Silver has taken over as commissioner. I like 76ers Celtics. Maybe they thought about giving us Celtics Raptors or maybe Sixers Raptors, but I think Celtics Sixers for the opening night is the best possible matchup. I mean, these two teams right here, I think you can consider the favorites to compete in the Eastern Conference Championship this season. Of course, the Raptors are right there, but we're only talking about these two teams for right now. They're the two favorites, and I mean, there's a rivalry to be had. There's history from last year. It's got everything you need. I mean, obviously the Celtics and Sixers are more of a historic rivalry than they are a rivalry right now. Obviously, both teams have enjoyed success over the course of their franchises being around in the NBA. The Sixers being a team who won a couple of championships in the 70s and 80s. The Celtics being a team who dominated the 50s and 60s, won championships in the 80s, and recently last one in 2008. Looking to get back to it. Last year, we saw both teams playing in the playoffs, second round. Philly was the favorite. I mean, why wouldn't they beat the Heat in 5 games? You figure they'd have a good chance against the Celtics last year. The Celtics ended up taking them out in 5 games. Every game was close except for the first. So, I mean, Philly, it's not like Philly just wasn't in it at all. So now we got them heading into this season. Ben Simmons and Embiid coming into their second season as the leaders and best players of that Philly team. Markelle Fultz looking like he's got his game finally back. I mean, there's been talk about him finally looking like the prospect he was coming into the NBA draft and all that. So we'll see how he does with Philly this season. And then over on Boston's side, I mean, you got Tatum Brown coming back after leading the Celtics in the playoffs along with Terry Rozier. Plus, they will be adding Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, who were not available for the postseason. Gordon Hayward not being available at all during the regular season. I'm curious to see how this Philly team deals with this new-look Celtics team. Because even though Philly got better, Boston got much better just by adding Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. And of course, Kyrie played about 50, 60 games, but missed a lot of the last part of this season and missed out on the entire postseason. So I like that game there. I think the NBA did well. I think it'll be a good atmosphere in Boston. And then we got Thunder Warriors. I'm assuming maybe some wanted Warriors, like obviously it's got to be the Warriors here. So some maybe wanted Warriors Rockets or some maybe wanted Warriors Lakers. Warriors Rockets I could see, but it's just, I don't know. I'm not as excited for Warriors Rockets this season as I maybe was last season. I just feel like if there was ever a chance for the Rockets to knock off the Warriors, it was the opportunity they had in the Western Conference Finals last season. Now I just think it's a point where maybe it's just someone else's turn or the Warriors are just too good. So I could go with that Rockets Warriors for opening night. As far as Lakers Warriors, I mean, let's be real here. Even with LeBron, the Lakers really don't come close to the Warriors. They don't. I mean, you can't tell me a team where Lonzo Ball can't shoot. Brandon Ingram, we got to wait and see what he does. Kyle Kuzma's a good player. But also those role players that they signed this offseason, I mean, that's not a team that competes with the Warriors' depth. Or even the guys they got starting. I mean, of course, there is a rivalry there, not between the Lakers and Warriors, but rather between LeBron and the Warriors. But that's one where I could see it in the playoffs or later on in the season. So I think Thunder Warriors is the perfect matchup. Obviously, with the Warriors going to be collecting their rings that night and all that, you'll be having Russell Westbrook watching them the entire time. As much as I want to get away from this quote-unquote rivalry between Russell Westbrook and KD, I don't think we'll ever escape it, so I've come to embrace it. I think that this was the right matchup just because of the fact that I think the Thunder would give the Warriors the best game on opening night. I think the Lakers would. I don't think it'd be a close game between them and the Lakers. And as far as the Rockets and Warriors, like I said, there's just no real excitement from me on that game. We saw last year, too, the Thunder had the Warriors' number the entire regular season. I mean, Russell Westbrook, Paul George played extremely well in those games. So this could be a night where the Warriors collect their rings, but the Thunder end up coming out with a win. And if you got the Thunder beating the Warriors or at least putting in a decent game and Boston and Philly being a decent game, I mean, that's the perfect night for the NBA. Given that you got the Thunder beating the Warriors opening night, there's going to be talk about maybe this Thunder team is better without Melo. So, I mean, there's more storylines to be created there. That's what it's all about. Then the second day of the opening NBA season, Wednesday, October 17th, we got Pelicans, Rockets, Mavericks, Suns. I don't have a problem with these games at all. Rockets, Pelicans is a bit of a weird one. That one's going to be taking place in Houston. I mean, the Pelicans just don't seem like a team who really excite me too much now. They lost Rondo, lost DeMarcus Cousins. They did bring on Julius Randle and kept Nikolai Mirotic around, and also still have Drew Holiday. But it's just, Anthony Davis hasn't done well to lead his teams when he's just been the star player. And I guess, yes, last year might be the exception, considering that You know what? I think I'm completely discrediting the Pelicans here and just not really remembering what they did last season after losing Boogie. They lose Boogie. They seemingly do better. And they did sweep the Trailblazers in the first round. So maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. So I do like the Pelicans, but it's just Pelicans-Rockets just seems like a weird matchup to me. Of course, we do get to see Melo in his first game as a Houston Rocket, so that'll be interesting to see. That game doesn't interest me as much as the one after that, where we got the Mavericks and Suns. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, Trevor Ariza heading over to the Suns. I mean, we're going to see a Suns team with DeAndre Ayton, the number 1 pick, Devin Booker, who recently extended with the Suns. Obviously, you got T.J. Warren, Josh Jackson coming into his second season. And over with Dallas, you got Dennis Smith Jr. coming into his second season, who looked extremely good at point guard last year. Dirk Nowitzki playing in, his 21st season. Harrison Barnes, and then Luka Doncic, the man everyone's been hyping up coming out of Europe. We'll see how he does in his first game. So I like Mavericks Suns Wednesday, October 17th. Then we got Thursday night, October 18th. We got Bulls 76ers. That's going to be a little fun matchup. I'm sure the Sixers will pull that one out. But either way, a young Bulls team. You got Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter Jr. We'll see Chris Dunn. And as far as the next game, we got LeBron's first game as a Laker. Will that game be taking place at Staples Center? No, it won't. It'll be taking place in Portland. I think the NBA dropped the ball here. I mean, at least make it Blazers-Lakers, but in LA. I don't get why we're having LeBron's first game as a Laker in Portland. I mean, if anything, have him play like a rival team. Have him play the Kings for that matter or something. That'd be much better than Lakers-Portland. But I guess we can't complain too much considering the game's going to go on no matter what I have to say about it. So, obviously, we'll see. We'll see what LeBron does in his first game in Portland. I mean, thanks NBA, I guess, for that one. Friday, we got Celtics-Raptors. Again, I mean, you could argue the Raptors are one of the top 2 teams in the East. They got better adding Kawhi Leonard for DeMar DeRozan. They did lose Jakob Poeltl, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be a loss. They're going to feel too much. And as for the Celtics, I mean, last year they finished right behind the Raptors, so that'll be a nice little battle to watch for this season. The second game after that, we got Warriors-Jazz. Jazz always play the Warriors pretty tough. I mean, now we're going to be seeing Donovan Mitchell coming into his second season leading that team and seeing what exactly the Jazz can do to improve. So I'm fine with that. Saturday, October 20th, we got Raptors-Wizards. I like those games there. That's a first-round matchup from last season. We'll see what John Wall and co can do this season. Then we got Rockets in LA facing the Lakers Saturday, October 20th. That'll be a fun game. That'll be LeBron James' first game in Staples Center, playing a good team in the Rockets. You have James Harden, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony there. So a lot of star power. And, I mean, it's a Saturday night primetime game, the last game of the night. So should be a fun one. Should draw some high ratings. And then on Sunday, you got Rockets-Clippers. So the NBA did well with this first week of games. Like I said, I would have liked LeBron's game to be in LA. And if you were going to put him on the road, maybe put him somewhere other than Portland. But that's just the way it goes. I'd say the 2 favorite matchups I'm looking forward to that week are 76ers-Celtics, and I think it's got to be opening night. Thunder Warriors and 76ers-Celtics. So, I mean, like I said, Russell Westbrook against the Warriors is always priceless. And also, Celtics and 76ers, that's going to be a fine little rivalry that develops over the course of the future. So, we'll see how all those games end up. I was going to do the Christmas Day games in this segment also, but we'll move that over to the next segment and also talk about the MLK games. So we're going to wrap it up here. Like I said, for the next segment, we will talk Christmas Day and we will talk MLK games along with anything else that needs to be brought up. So stay tuned and I will be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Spent that first segment talking about the new college basketball rules in the NCAA. And we spent that second segment talking about the opening week slate of games set for this season in the NBA. Now we talk about the Christmas Day games and the games on MLK. So looking at the games over on MLK Day, we've got obviously Memphis playing in the first one they're going to be playing the Pelicans this year. Grizzlies are going to be a very interesting team. I'm curious to see how Jaren Jackson looks, and let's not forget they got Mike Conley. He was injured all last season, but he's still a very good point guard. I wouldn't be surprised if the Grizzlies sneak up on a few teams this season. So that's going to be a good game. We got Rockets 76ers. That should be a fun one to watch right there. I mean, the 76ers, we already know what kind of team they should be this season, along with the Rockets. I mean, it's going to be one where it's going to be very high scoring. I'm sure Joel Embiid's going to be one of the big stars of that game, along with James Harden. So I like it there, and I can tell the NBA is really going to be pushing Lakers on us here. That game's going to take place in LA. I mean, I really hope the NBA doesn't try to push Lakers-Warriors as a type of rivalry, because it's not. So we'll see, but I really think they are. Like I said, I could do without the Warriors-Lakers games. So then we move on to the Christmas Day games. And these are usually the most anticipated ones to find out about. Looking at what the NBA has given us, we got Bucks, Knicks, Thunder, Houston, 76ers, Celtics, Lakers, Warriors, Blazers, Jazz. At first glance, my first thought is the NBA could have done better here. And I think they should have done better. All right, so let's go at each game and I guess just give my thoughts on it first, and then I'll give you what I thought maybe the NBA should have done for Christmas. So Bucks, Knicks, I actually like this one. I think this is the one I have the least problem with. Because, I mean, the Knicks on Christmas Day, they don't deserve to play on Christmas. But, of course, they're a New York team, so they're going to get a lot of publicity. And given that it's Madison Square Garden, that's what, I guess, gives it a little added factor and story to the game. And we've seen Madison Square Garden is a great place for top NBA players to go and play at. Guys like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry have all had their Madison Square Garden games, meaning games where they pretty much just absolutely went off for 60, 50 points, whatever it was. And I think this is like the NBA is aiming towards that with this Bucks and Knicks game. Because let's not forget, last year, Kristaps Porzingis tore his ACL. Chances are he won't be ready by this time, and even if he was, I'm assuming that the Knicks won't really be that great of a team without him, and more so a team that is already one of the worst in the league and playing for the lottery. If you're the Knicks, it makes no sense to bring on Porzingis when you can get a decent lottery pick and there's nothing else to play for, such as playoffs. So I don't think Porzingis will be around at that time. Maybe Kevin Knox is playing real good basketball for the Knicks, and he's kind of making them watchable. But other than that, I mean, they're not really going to be a great team. So you figure, what's the story here between the Bucks and Knicks? What is there to watch for? And that's Giannis going for about 60 points. That's why the NBA put this game on Christmas. Not to watch a good basketball game, but to have Giannis Antetokounmpo have his Madison Square Garden moment. To have a game like Steph Curry, who couldn't miss. To have a game like LeBron, where basically he established himself. Or a game like Kobe, where basically he came and just wanted to prove to everyone. I mean, Madison Square Garden is where you go to put up certain amounts of points if you are a top player in the league. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I don't think is being regarded as a top 5 player yet. But a game like that against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden is what elevates you. So like I said, the angle here for the NBA is to have Giannis Antetokounmpo go for at least 50. And you know what? I am going to call it right now. Giannis will go for at least 50. He's going to have that kind of game against New York. I mean, it always happens. The crowd's going to go crazy. Knicks fans are going to be cheering for Giannis because it's what they do. They have no one to cheer for on their own team, so they'll cheer for the Steph Currys, the LeBron James, the Kobe Bryants, and the Giannis Antetokounmpos. And it's going to be exciting watching Giannis do that to the Knicks. And I'm not trying to hate on the Knicks, but like I said, every top player has their Madison Square Garden game. Jordan has, like I said, Kobe, Steph, and LeBron have. And now we're going to be having Giannis have that game. So like I said, I'm calling 50 at least for Giannis Antetokounmpo in New York on Christmas Day. And it's going to be great. That's the story right here. Giannis versus Madison Square Garden. So I have no problem with that game whatsoever. I wouldn't change that game at all. So I like it. Good job on the NBA there. I see what you're trying to do, and you're doing it well. Then we got Thunder Rockets. I mean, it's going to be a fun game to watch. Melo versus his old team, but they'll be in Houston. Obviously, James Harden versus his old team. And I mean, Melo, I say it like he's been there for a while. His old team for a year. James Harden was actually played in the championship with these guys, but I think that's kind of played its course, played itself out. So, I mean, I do like Thunder Rockets. It should be a good game, but, yeah. Then we got 76ers and Celtics. I can already tell the NBA is going to make all 4 of these games on prime time. I'm sure we'll get the other 2 on ESPN or maybe 1 on NBA TV. I feel like the NBA maybe could have switched it up here. Lakers-Warriors, like I said, the NBA is going to do their hardest to push a Warriors-Lakers rivalry, when in reality there isn't one. I mean, LeBron versus the Warriors, sure, there's one there, but I mean, I feel like LeBron versus the Warriors kind of loses its luster once he leaves Cleveland as he has. So Lakers-Warriors, it'll be like all these games will be fun to watch, but I just feel like the NBA, like this isn't their best. And then we got Blazers-Jazz to end the night. Yeah, that's cool. Sure. Great. Blazers-Jazz, woohoo. No one's going to be watching that game. I will. The diehards will, but as far as the casuals, I'm not too many sure we'll get too many Blazers-Jazz high ratings type games. So those are the games, 5 games for Christmas Day. Let me tell you what I would do for Christmas Day if I was able to pick it. So Bucks-Knicks, I'm fine. I feel like that's the perfect game to start out Christmas Day. 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Pacific Time. Like I said, I'm perfectly fine with the story being Giannis, one of the best up-and-coming players in the NBA, finally having his Madison Square Garden moment where he drops 50 points or whatever. So I have no problem with that game. That's perfect. The NBA did great there. That's the best they could do there. I have no problem with that opening game. So then we got Thunder Rockets. I feel like we could have went, let's see, Thunder Rockets. I feel like maybe the move here was... Actually, let's go through the matchups I would have liked to have. Okay, so Bucks-Knicks is fine. Then instead of Lakers-Warriors, I would have liked to see Lakers... Actually, yeah. Instead of Thunder Rockets, I would have liked to see Thunder Jazz. That's a matchup I would have liked to see there. And I get James Harden playing against his former team, Melo playing against his former team that he played for with a year, but there's no real history there, I'd say. I'd say that Jazz and Thunder would be a funner one, considering that there wasn't like bad blood, quote unquote, but you could tell these two teams didn't like each other. The Thunder were more so under the impression that why are we losing to these scrubs? We should be much better. And the Jazz just being a team where we're going to get under your skin and play better basketball than you. I would have liked to see Thunder Jazz on Christmas Day. So that would be my lineup. Bucks, Knicks, then we can do Thunder Jazz. Thunder Jazz would probably be the late game, but it doesn't matter. I'm just giving you my 5 matchups. Then instead of 76ers Celtics, I would have liked to see Lakers Celtics. I think that would have been the right matchup to make on Christmas Day. And of course, the games on Christmas Day are the games where everyone's just going to be sitting down in the living room or whatever, just watching basketball all day after spending time with the family. I think Lakers Celtics would have been perfect. Because you know what? You got the family all together. You got some of the older folks out there. They're going to remember Celtics-Lakers, the rivalry. So they're going to like it because of that. Then you get the younger generation. We got LeBron versus Kyrie. I mean, Lakers-Celtics historic rivalry, LeBron versus Kyrie, doesn't get any better than that. That should have been the game the NBA made on Christmas instead of 76ers Celtics. So I would have did Bucks, Knicks, Thunder, Jazz, Lakers, Celtics. Then that's where I go Warriors, Rockets. A rematch of the Western Conference Finals. A rivalry that's still there, I guess you could say. I'm not sure how much of a rivalry I believe it to be, but either way, there's a story to watch there. Rockets playing the Warriors. I think that's the game to make there. And then as for the 5th and final game, I'm not sure what game I make that. Of course, the NBA has it as Utah versus Portland. Maybe you go with... This one's tough. We got to kind of get creative with this one. Maybe Portland, New Orleans. How about that? And again, Sixers fans wouldn't be happy that it took them off Christmas, but I do think the other games would be better. So we'd have Bucks, Knicks, Giannis at Madison Square Garden, Thunder, Jazz, rematch of the first round playoffs last year. Celtics, Lakers, historic rivalry, Kyrie versus LeBron. Warriors, Rockets, rematch of the Western Conference Finals. And then Blazers at New Orleans or New Orleans at Portland. Portland's able to get a little bit of some revenge here on Christmas Day. I think the NBA could have did that. Like I said, I don't think they did their best here with these Christmas Day games. Of course, they're all going to be good games, but like I said, I think they could have been better here. So that's all I got to say about that. Wanted to play schedule creator for a second, but nonetheless, for the fourth segment, we will be talking about anything else going on in the NBA. So stay tuned, and I will be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Spent that first segment talking about the NBA or the new NCAA rules as far as college basketball, and then we spent the last two segments talking about the opening weekend basketball in the NBA, the schedule that the NBA put out, and then we spent that last segment talking about the Christmas Day games, how I'd have it. The NBA put out for Christmas Day Bucks, Knicks, Thunder, Rockets, Sixers, Celtics, Warriors, Lakers, and then Jazz versus Portland. I would have did it Bucks, Knicks, Thunder, Jazz. I'd go Celtics, Lakers, Rockets, Warriors, and then I'd have Portland play New Orleans that day. Obviously, I know you don't have Philly on Christmas Day, but I'm sure they'll have plenty of primetime games this season. I mean, all of Philly's games against the top teams of the NBA will be on national TV, I'm sure of it, as they should be, but that's just the way I would do it. I tried finding a matchup for Philly, but, I mean, the only real matchup for them on Christmas Day would be Philly versus Boston, maybe Philly, New York, but I do like the prospect of Giannis scoring for 50 in Madison Square Garden on Christmas Day, so I didn't want to mess with that one. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure people have come up with other good games that they'd like to see on Christmas Day. So we move on from that. And the New Orleans Pelicans, speaking of them, they ended up signing Jahlil Okafor to their squad. You feel like this is Jahlil Okafor's last chance to find himself a home in the NBA. Jahlil Okafor was a top 3 pick when he came into the draft by Philly. And it just seemed that the skills he had didn't translate to the modern NBA and how centers are now. I mean, guys like DeMarcus Cousins are out here shooting three-pointers. Guys like Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid can dribble a basketball like a point guard. I mean, it's ridiculous how athletic these centers are. I just think there's a point where the game, like I said, just doesn't value the skills that Jahlil Okafor possesses. People say that if Jahlil Okafor played back in the 90s or 80s, he'd be a decent player. Now, it's not really a game for him. It didn't work out with Brooklyn, and I mean, they were one of the worst teams in the league last year. And maybe Jahlil Okafor gives the Pelicans some depth at the 5, so that's why they're able to keep him around for a while. But like I said, if he doesn't show anything this season, then I'm not really too sure that Jahlil Okafor has much of a future in the NBA going forward. I mean, the guy's got talent, but there's just a point of, can you really maximize his abilities on the court and it help you? I'm not too sure about it. So, I mean, I hope he ends up working out well. It seems that amongst his peers, meaning the players in the NBA, they know that he has ability and they know he can play the game of basketball. I think it's just a point where maybe Jahlil Okafor needs to go to a coach who can harness those talents and turn them into something positive. And I mean, Alvin Gentry, I think, is one of those coaches. I think we can all agree Alvin Gentry is one of the top 10 coaches in the league. So, I think, like I said, I think it could work there. I think it could. So, like, teams like maybe the Celtics would help. Brad Stevens, I think, could do some work with Jahlil Okafor. Maybe a guy like Quinn Snyder, Eric Spoelstra, Steve Kerr. Just guys who put players in positions to succeed. Don't really try to change up their game or anything like that. What are you good at? I'm good at this, this, and that. Okay, when you're in the game, you will be doing this, this, and that, and nothing more. If Jahlil Okafor wasn't good, he wouldn't have got drafted top 3 in the NBA. Of course, maybe we might have overvalued him a bit in college, but either way, he has skills. It's just a matter of if those coaches can get him to use those skills in a game rather than try to do anything else. And again, a lot of it is up to him whether or not he wants to be the player he can be. And I'm not saying Jahlil Okafor is ever going to turn into a top NBA center or anything like that. But Jahlil Okafor is at the point now where basically his goal's got to be lasting long in the NBA. How do I do that? How do I sharpen my game? How do I excel to the point where teams are going to want to keep me around, whether it be an end-of-the-bench type of guy or a guy who comes in with the second unit or maybe a situational type of center? Who knows? So that's got to be his next goal. If not, he won't really be around much longer. And that's a humbling thing to do, too, to think, you know what, I'm never going to be one of the best in this league, but I can find myself a role and stick around that way. I mean, look at Brian Scalabrine. Brian Scalabrine was a decent basketball player as far as the NBA goes. Brian Scalabrine, towards the end of his career, I think we can argue, maybe wasn't better than some of the guys who were available. And looking at Brian Scalabrine's career, I mean, the guy averaged 3 points a game, 2 rebounds, and less than an assist. Shot 39% over his career, 34 from 3, 78 from the free throw line. I mean, his best season was when he averaged 6 points a game back in 2004 with the New Jersey Nets. Brian Scalabrine played in the league for 11 seasons. Do you realize that? And his highest points per game average was 6.3. Brian Scalabrine did well to find himself a role and excel at that role. Was he the best player? No. But he knew what he brought to the table, and he knew what he needed to do in order to stick around. Brian Scalabrine, 11 seasons. Now he's a color commentator for the Celtics. I mean, that's how you do it right there. So that's the path that Jahlil Okafor's got to take. And let me take a look at Jahlil Okafor's numbers so far in his career. Because like I said, there's no way that they look good, but I just want to see what exactly we're working with here. So let's see. He came into the league back in 2015. I mean, 2015, Jahlil Okafor averaged 17 points, 7 rebounds. That's pretty solid in your rookie year. Made the all-rookie team that season. Averaged 17 and 7 and a block. Let's see, his field goal percentage, 50% from the field. And played in 48 games that season. Well, at least he started 48 games that season. Second year, he only starts 33 games. He's available for 50 of them. He goes for 11 points that season, nearly 12, about 5 rebounds, and shoots 51% from the field. So obviously his numbers have gone down each year that he's been in the league. 2017 was his third year in the league. Philly ends up trading him over to Brooklyn. With Brooklyn, he played 26 games, was available for 26, had 6 points, 3 rebounds, and shot 56% from the field. So obviously, Jahlil Okafor is struggling to find a role in the league, but if he's able to do that, he'll be able to stick around. But like I said, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do because it's going to take some humbling. Given that, I mean, the guy was a top 3 pick, and now he's a guy who probably belongs on the bench and only needs to come on for about 10, 15 minutes at a time. Brian Scalabrine could do it. I'm sure Jahlil Okafor could do it. I mean, Brian Scalabrine, over the course of his career, he averaged only 13 minutes per game. But still played 11 seasons and got a championship out of it. So, we'll see exactly what Jahlil Okafor wants to do, but I think New Orleans is his last chance. If he doesn't show anything there, then the guy doesn't really have much of a future in the league. But there's that. And like I said, Carmelo Anthony verbalized that he will be playing for the Rockets this season. It should be fun to watch. I mean, their offense isn't really too complex. All he's got to do is sit at the three-point line, take the shot if he's open, pass it if he's not, and I'm sure he's going to get to ISO sometime. So I think it's one that it fits Carmelo's skills a lot, but it's just a point of I think Carmelo's old, and I just think that he just doesn't got it anymore. But I could be proven wrong this season. We'll see how it ends up going down. But either way, we're going to wrap it up here for today. Today we talked new NCAA rules. Elite prospects labeled by USA Basketball can hire agents. Agents can pay for meals, transportation for them and their families. We talked the schedule that the NBA put out opening week and Christmas Day. And then for this segment, we talked a lot about Jahlil Okafor. So thanks for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. As always, I am your host, Jesse Tapia. I will be back next Wednesday, so stay tuned till then, and I will talk to you guys later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.